We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. We have the good fortune to have a guest with us today, and that is Eric. He is in Iowa. And Eric, things are getting a little rough for Donald Trump. But before we get into all that's going on the national level, why don't you catch us up on the happenings in Iowa? Because the last time we talked, you were kind of getting a little sense that even Iowa might go blue, but
I,
that's a
I
lot to ask.
I still think there's a chance if Iowa doesn't go blue entirely. I think we've got four House seats here in Iowa. I think at least two of them flip to blue because I think right now all four are
Republican,
re
yeah.
Republicans. Yeah, and last time Iowa District 2, which is Northeast Iowa, was decided by 6 votes.
Wow.
So
Wow.
if following that trend, and this is going to have way more turnout, I think that one could flip. Just based on, I mean, it only took, if everybody who voted the exact same way as last time, it's within 6 votes, add some more people, that one could flip. Um, and I think there's just a good chance that two of them might flip, and there is a chance all four House seats could flip blue. Um, I would love to see it here in uh, my district. We haven't had a blue representative in my lifetime
Wow.
that I'm aware of, at least since I've been 18. Because sometime around the time I turned 18, I want to say somewhere in that neighborhood is when we lost a representative due to them reshuffling due to population with the Electoral College, and Iowa went from 5 representatives to 4.
So what could be happening in Iowa could literally be historic, something we haven't seen in a long
I
time, if
think so.
ever.
I mean, we have Iowa District 4. If that one flips blue, that would be historic. We thought their best chance for Iowa District 4 to flip, which is Northwest Iowa, um, was a couple of years ago when Steve King was still on the ballot, and Steve King still got reelected, and then he fucked up even worse, got kicked out of the House, and then Randy Feenstra got in there, and he's been in there ever since. I don't know if Steve King got kicked out or if he got primaried out. But either way, the Republicans got sick of his bullshit.
Well, if
And
you remember Steve King, he was a proud racist, is basically what he
oh,
was.
that's underselling it a little bit. But um, I had an ex-girlfriend whose dad told me at the time, right around going into 2020, that what this country needed was 4 more years of Donald Trump, followed by 8 years of Steve King as president.
Wow. I think I know why she's your ex.
That wasn't the only reason, but I think I might have dodged a bullet by being involved with that family.
Because the rest of your life, Thanksgiving and Christmas would have been hell.
Yeah, I was already struggling. I couldn't go over, like, I had to bite my tongue about politics, and she was voting Republican mostly because of them,
Yeah.
because most of her adult life, off and on being a single mom or even being with somebody, she needed daycare assistance where grandma and grandpa would help watch her kids, and he would always threaten every election cycle that if she didn't go in and vote, and if she didn't swear that she voted Republican until the next election, he wouldn't do any babysitting for her.
Wow. That sounds like a sweet guy. I always told my
Yeah.
kids before you decide to get married, meet the family first because you're going to have to live with them too. And there
Yeah.
are some fucked up people in this world. You don't want to be anchored to that for the rest of your life. There's no Senate elections going on in Iowa, right?
No, I think in 2026, I think Chuck Grassley's up,
Yeah.
and he's it's either Chuck Grassley next or Joni Ernst next, and then the following election is the other one. I think it's Chuck Grassley, and he's already filed the paperwork to run again
Yeah, but he's a
at
million
like
years old.
96.
Yeah, he's like 96. The guy should be 86th is what he should be doing.
Yeah.
With any luck, he'll keel over before 2026, which is highly possible when you're approaching 100. That guy's an absolute piece of shit. And I would think it would be hilarious that after the election, if there are indictments that go out, that he may be on the list because of his activities with regards to January 6th.
Oh, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping he's on that list. I want his reputation to be completely ruined because of his ties to January 6th.
Yeah, that's the very least that should happen. You were talking about some constitutional things going on in Iowa too.
Yeah, there are two amendments on the ballot. Now, the way I've seen some other creators who are talking politics, they have some issues with it. It redefines the Iowa Constitution in the line of succession. So right now, it's a little ambiguous when there's no governor, if the lieutenant governor is acting governor or if they become governor, kind of like how it was in the US Constitution when prior to them fixing the wording with the line of succession when the first time a president died in office.
Right.
We're facing that. Well, then there's some question as to who becomes lieutenant governor, how does that work? And I saw one creator right before we got on here was saying that there's something about the voters get a say, and I don't quite know how that works. If I'm being honest. But the new wording would say if there's a vacancy in the governor position, lieutenant governor becomes actual governor and they can appoint their own replacement.
That's the way it should be.
That makes sense to me. But some people have issues with it because there is a vacancy right now at lieutenant governor. Kim Reynolds is not appointing a new lieutenant governor until after the election. She's purposely holding off. And what I think she's going to do is either pick somebody from a Republican member of the Iowa House or Iowa Senate that lost and put them in, or she's going to look at who she has left for support in the Iowa House and Senate and pick somebody who is in a very, very safe district where they could win a special election or whatever they need to do and not hurt their margins in the Iowa House and Senate.
Is it possible that when the Republicans get absolutely embarrassed on November 5th and MAGA and Donald Trump become a pariah, she doesn't try to do something to cover her ass and maybe put a more liberal person in lieutenant governor and said, oh, yeah, I was doing that, but see, I'm a good guy because I put this person in there?
I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought of it being more of a moderate. I think it'll still be a Republican.
Yeah,
but
I think
maybe
so too.
A more moderate Republican. That's entirely, I hadn't thought of that as an option, but that could be something they do because that's how Republicans are. They always try to backpedal later and make you believe how they're acting right now is how they've always been. The other constitutional amendment is bullshit. It's not going to pass, I don't think. I would be surprised if it did, but Iowa is one of the states that has undocumented immigrants voting or, that issue on the ballot.
Right.
There is a constitutional amendment that they put on there saying that no local or state laws can be passed granting non-citizens the right to vote, and that if you are 17 but would be 18 before the general election, you can vote in the primary. Well, we've talked about it a lot. Non-citizens are not voting. That's not a thing that's happening.
It's not a
just
problem.
A Republican talking point.
And that's already a law.
Right. That's already a thing that's not happening. The only change would be that they would prevent, I'll use Des Moines, the city of Des Moines, saying, well, anybody who lives here, regardless of immigration status, can vote for city council and mayor and the people that affect them on a daily basis, like some cities are.
Right.
It would prevent that. And as far as the minors being able to vote in the primary, if they'd be 18 before the general election or on election day, that's already Iowa law. That's been a law since I turned 18. If you will be 18 by election day, no matter when the primary is, you can vote. That's always been a thing because you get a say then in who you're going to vote for on election day.
Right.
That's how Iowa does it.
Well, that's how Republicans do everything. It's all performative. It doesn't have to mean anything. They just want to show that they're being active or be strong or whatever. It's such a waste of time and it's so silly. We get it on the federal level, and now, of course, we're getting it on the state level with Iowa. Not surprised when you've got people like Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst as the senator and your
Yeah.
governor, that piece of shit. You have to wonder, I just suggested that the governor may be waiting till after the election to try to figure out who she would best appoint as lieutenant governor, given the situation they're in at that point. I mean, I can't think of any other reason why you would wait till after the election unless you're kind of testing the waters to see what your situation is. What do you think happens with your governor and your senators when Donald Trump loses and he loses in a big way? And then all of a sudden he becomes a pariah. Do these people walk back from that or do they stay strong with MAGA?
I think some of them are going to start walking back, and they're going to do some of what they've always done, and they'll take credit for things that help the state of Iowa, et cetera. Because that's just how they are. We have to pass a farm bill right now. The current farm bill has expired, and Chuck Grassley's going to be, and Joni Ernst are probably going to be two of the ones that are going to help push to make sure the bill gets passed, even
Right.
in a Democratic-controlled Senate and with a Democratic-controlled House with Kamala Harris as president. If that passes, they're not going to give the credit to Kamala Harris and the Democratic-controlled legislature. They're going to say, "We made that happen. We
Yeah.
pushed for it,"
Well,
and
and
they're going
that's
to come back and run on it.
and that's why the Democrats have to be continue to carry the narrative and keep talking. That's what the Republicans have always done, and we need to outshout them and keep the people properly informed because we certainly can't trust the media to do it.
No, we can't. The media, although I have noticed they are starting slightly to push back against the Republican narrative. There's some stories out, well, Ted Cruz might lose or he might be in trouble. They're putting out some minor pieces, but they're still hedging the bet. Oh, it's going to be close all the way up and down the ballot. Oh, we don't know who's going to have control of the Senate. Oh, we don't know who's going to win the presidency. I don't think Donald Trump gets more than 40% of the popular vote.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I can't imagine how he would. And I've said this about the media. The media was playing this game. Well, it's a toss up and it's close, and Donald Trump is winning here. And I've said as we get closer to the election, and we're about as close as we can get, that they will start shifting their message to be more Kamala, pro Kamala, only because they don't want to look like they're standing flat footed when they're totally wrong. They are going to be totally wrong, but they're going to try to, like you say, hedge their bets a little so that they don't look like they were 180 degrees wrong.
Well, did you see today on Fox? I can't think of the guy's name. I did a TikTok on it. Howard Kurtz, I think is his name, on Fox.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
a pre-recorded interview with Donald Trump and pushed back about the dogs and cats in Springfield bullshit. It pushed back, and Donald Trump doubled down, tripled down, and they kind of pushed back a little bit and said, "No, it's not true. We checked with the officials. They're saying it's not going on." And Donald Trump doubled down. "I know what's going on. What about the geese? The geese are missing, and they're eating the geese, and all this stuff." And they were pushing slightly back against him. And I did a TikTok on it. And some people in my comments were like, "Well, just one creator doesn't mean the network is changing." I said, "No, but it's in my video." I'm like, you're gonna start seeing this. They're gonna start trying to go back to their old ways of claiming to be a fair and balanced look at the right.
Right,
And
right.
they're gonna start trying to put the left on in a more moderate tone. And they're gonna get away from this rhetoric. They're starting now because they know how bad it's going to get in the next 2 weeks. They know
Exactly.
Donald Trump is losing, and they're trying to slowly distance themselves ahead of the election.
I think they waited too long, though. They were trying to milk this thing and keep people hyped up for too long. And like everybody else that stayed around Donald Trump, they stuck around too long. That stink isn't going to go away. And I know for me, after the election, every time I hear somebody talking shit about Donald Trump, who I know was a big Trump humper, I'm going to mention it. If I ever get a chance to talk to somebody, I'll say, hey, yeah, but you did this to the detriment of this country. You don't get off the hook just because you decide to change your mind. That's, we can't accept that. We've got to push back against that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only way Fox News gets out from the stink of Donald Trump is pretty much they need a top-down cleansing,
Yeah, they
new
have to.
ownership,
Yeah.
new board, all of the executives, and new on-air personalities. Doesn't matter who. They need to cleanse everybody out of there, and then maybe you can go back and say, okay, they might be closer, not exactly news, but they would at least be able to get a chance at being closer to news than they are now.
What Fox News would have to do is akin to what the Republican Party has to do. The Republican Party is being burnt down. There isn't much left to salvage after this election. So they got to somehow reimagine themselves, come out with a new plan, come out with a new direction, and then build up personalities within that group. And that's what Fox News would have to do. You don't just throw somebody on and they become they become popular right away. You've got to develop that, and you've got to make sure you pick the right people. Uh, the Republicans, Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, they're going to be behind the eight ball quite a bit, and it's going to take a long time for them to come back to where they were.
And that depends on how they handle this election coming up.
Yeah,
You know,
true.
Fox News still has an outstanding $2.2 billion defamation case with Smartmatic voting systems. And there's already some reporting, maybe not from Fox, but that the Dominion lies are being spread again. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene on Infowars talking about Dominion changing votes, etc. If they keep spreading those lies again, they'll get sued again and maybe into oblivion.
Well,
They might not exist.
well, you mentioned that about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I was going to bring that up. Marjorie Taylor Greene must be one of the dumbest humans on earth, and she must be scared because she's talking about her own district and she's talking about Dominion changing Republican votes to Democrat. We know that's not true. And Dominion, we know they are litigious and they will sue anybody, whether it be um, uh, Fox News or an individual like Rudy Giuliani. Um, she's going to get sued if everybody else is getting sued, but it tells me she's nervous that she's going to lose. She's going up against a formidable guy. He's a former military general. He's a legitimate guy. Yes, he's Democrat, and it's a Republican district, but people have just got to be getting tired of being embarrassed by Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she's pretty nervous about her prospects.
I think she's terrified. And her coming out and saying, because what did she say on Infowars? That it was all based off of a Facebook post that
Yeah.
some woman supposedly went in, wrote Republican all the way down the ballot, put it into the Dominion scanning machine, and then it printed out a copy of her ballot with all the Democrats checked, not one Republican. And they
Yeah.
went up, talked to the person, and they did something, canceled that ballot, started over, did it again, tried it again, did the same thing like 3 or 4 times, is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. Well, you're telling me
That
that
didn't happen.
if it happened even once or more than once, that there's not a bit of video evidence, a photograph, any sort of evidence you can show that this happened. If there was, it'd be out there covered by the mainstream news networks. It wouldn't be on Infowars.
Right.
But it didn't happen.
And you would shut down the machine if there was
Right.
proof. First of all, you don't get to print it out and look at what people voted for. The whole idea that that's what they did is completely ridiculous because you don't do this. These are secret ballots. They go into the pile. There's no way they could check that. Um, she, that's what Republicans do. They just pull something out of their ass and they say it as if it's real, and only dumb people believe it's real. Marjorie Taylor Greene, um, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to her. She may be on the hook for the superseding indictments for the insurrection as well when this is all said and done. I think she's in the same situation in her mind that she thinks as long as she's a sitting member of Congress, she's safe from prosecution. That's not true because she's not a president, but I think she thinks that's her only safe way out.
I think she does because to this point, she has been safe.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, she got elected right before January 6th, or well, she took office right before January 6th. She was in office 3 days before that all happened. And to this point, under Democratic administration, in part because of Merrick Garland, nothing has happened to sitting members of Congress.
Right.
If
Right.
Merrick Garland would have got off his ass and went and got Jack Smith a year ahead of when he did, 18 months ahead of when he did, because no new evidence came out, no new things happened in those almost 2 years that he took sitting on his thumbs waiting to go get Jack Smith.
Yeah.
If he would have appointed a special counsel, March of 2021, Marjorie Taylor Greene probably has charges. Chuck Grassley has charges. Lauren Boebert probably has charges. You can go down the list, and Donald Trump would be sitting in a jail cell right now, not running for president.
People are always talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Jim Jordan, and all that shit. And they're saying, I hope they get voted out. And I would like to see him get voted out too, but I'm not as worried about it because what the prospects are for them next year is decidedly different than what we're looking at now. Even if they are still there, they're going to be in a House of Representatives where the Democrats have a majority of 20, 30, maybe even 40 seats. They're going to be pretty much stymied. There isn't much they can do. And as I was telling somebody else, do you want Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was an idiot and does nothing, in a Republican seat? Or do you want somebody who actually might be good? I'd rather have Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting there fucking up every day like she does now.
True. I mean, because she wouldn't vote for anything.
No.
Whereas if you had somebody decent, and I will use a Mitch McConnell as my example. Mitch McConnell can play the politics game, who would be decent, and he could turn around. And yes, he's been an obstructionist, but he would know how to wheel and deal. And well, I'll vote for your thing if you give me this thing in that same bill or whatever,
Right.
And we would lose things with somebody decent in that Republican seat because they would ask for concessions somewhere,
Right.
whether it's funding for something or a law that we didn't need or whatever. Whereas Marjorie Taylor Greene would just be a no vote and not even a loud no vote when they're not in the majority.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that. I think of anything, people are most confident about the House as far as how that's going to turn out. We're going to get a majority, and we're going to get a significant majority, which is helpful. But we need the Senate too, so we got to make sure that's going. And to be perfectly honest with you, people are saying, "Well, I don't know about the Senate. It could go this way." I think there's a lot of Republicans that are vulnerable right now. Rick Scott, Ted Cruz, and people like that. People that they would normally expect to be a gimme, that they're going to win because they're incumbents and perennial winners. I don't think that's a thing this time around.
I think as we get closer, I'm looking at the data, the fundraising data, et cetera. I'm thinking there are 5 Republican senators that could be in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them matter if John Tester wins Montana.
Right.
But the 5 I'm thinking of, you got Rick Scott in Florida. I think he's in jeopardy, and Florida is in jeopardy of flipping blue. You got Josh Hawley in Texas, and I think if Colin
Missouri.
Allred beats Texas, I think Texas goes with Colin Allred and Kamala wins Texas. Josh
Right.
Hawley in Missouri. Marsha Blackburn in Tennessee?
Yes.
I think she could be up for grabs. And what's her name? Fisher in Nebraska.
Yeah. That would be weird if that happened in Nebraska. That'd be surprising.
And I was convinced it was going to be close, but now with the Nebraska Supreme Court saying that yes, felons who have completed their sentence do get their voting rights back, but they have I think it's a week and a half left or something like that to register.
Right.
And might even be less than that now. I'm not sure what the exact time frame is, but they had a little bit of time to register. They could vote. That's huge. And we don't know which way they're going to vote.
Well, now
do they vote?
You were talking about the early voting in Iowa. Has that started, or is that going to start here soon?
That started on the 15th, which the early voting in Iowa, this is going to be interesting because it is the first year under the new early voting laws in Iowa.
Really? What are they?
They, well, the Republicans changed the rules, of course, after the 2020 early voting um, mishap. They went and bowed to Donald Trump and changed a bunch of stuff. One of them, well, the two big ones that I'm aware of is we used to have a 29-day window for early voting in Iowa.
Uh-huh.
They changed it to 20 days. They took out 9 whole days of early voting because don't need it or whatever. Too much fraud with early voting. I don't know. And the other the other thing they changed is with 2020, the Secretary of State mailed everybody an application for an absentee ballot.
Right.
And now they changed it. Cannot do that. You have to apply at your county auditor's office with them. I don't know exactly if you can do it online or in person or what to get a mail-in ballot mailed to you, but you got to go through each individual county and their auditor, and you have to request them to send you the mail-in ballot, or I think it's even the application for the mail-in ballot. Like you have to specifically request it to get your mail-in ballot. You can't just get one sent to you because you're on the voter roll.
Well, I mean, if you're asking for an absentee ballot, that would suggest that you're not in Iowa. And and if you're not in Iowa, how do you stop by the office and get that worked out? You can't.
Well, they use absentee ballots for anybody who um, doesn't vote on election day. So anybody who's stuck in their house, for example, your elderly people who can't move, can't just go get in their car and drive down, for example, or
Right.
the people who are still capable of voting that are in a nursing home,
Right.
they would be voting absentee. They've made it more difficult for those people to vote to get the absentee ballot ahead because they bowed to Donald Trump's claims of uh, issues with mail-in votes and absentee votes, etc. But there's still early voting in person where you can go down to your county courthouse and just say, hey, I'm here to vote today. Give them your ID. That's still a thing. You can still vote early. And that's what, I'm going to probably do since this is airing on Monday, probably later today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's is there any indication as to what the turnout's been so far? Or is it too early to tell?
Uh, from the one day of voting I saw, it sounded like it was a little underwhelming from what they thought they were going to get.
Really?
Well, at least from like they were talking city of Des Moines, like Polk County proper
Right.
was a little underwhelming, but I haven't heard anything beyond that as far as any issues. When I go later today, I'll have a better idea for here, but any other year where I've gone to vote early, if I've had to wait, it was a line of like 2 people.
Right.
So that's what I'm expecting, but we'll see if I'm off by that at all.
No, that'll be interesting. That will be very interesting. Were you surprised at all when you heard about Georgia and how they were double and maybe even triple the turnout? That's certainly a telling thing.
That did surprise me, especially when you heard where those votes were coming from.
Democratic
Mo-
strongholds. Yeah.
Mostly Fulton County.
Yeah.
And it was I'm pretty sure Fulton is Atlanta.
That's right.
Yeah, so heavily Democratic area. That is not good for Donald Trump that they are setting records for early voter turnout. And I think Georgia stays blue.
That would be nice. That would be a big hit for Donald Trump if he can't flip Georgia. I mean, I know he was desperate to do it in 2020, tried everything he could, didn't do it. He hasn't done anything to flip it this time around either. I think there's a good chance he's going to lose Georgia.
Well, the one creator I saw was looking at where Donald Trump was spending his money and his time. And they were saying out of the swing states and with where they were reliably putting states to go, Donald Trump had to take Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And that was about his only path to the presidency based on not just polls, but common sense, like putting Arizona going safely Kamala Harris when Ruben Gallego is beating Kerry Lake by 10 plus points. it's like we say all the time. You're not going to vote for one and not vote for the other half of that ticket.
Right, right. Well, the thing about it is too is he's counting on Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. He's counting on those, assuming that he gets all the other expected states that normally are red.
Right.
But I think there's going to be a big surprise to the Republicans. There will be states not expected to flip that will. You talked about Florida. If Florida flips, that throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing, and I don't know what he has to do to come back from that.
I think I was kind of fiddling around on 270 to win, the website where you can play with the electoral count
Yeah.
map. And I think if he loses Florida, what was it? He would have to take Georgia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and was it Wisconsin and Michigan,
Wow.
I think,
Yeah.
to offset Florida, something like that.
Well, the interesting thing is we're going to see more from Florida quicker because it's on the East Coast. So if Florida goes south on Donnie Trump, this decision could be made pretty early because the farthest west is Michigan or Wisconsin. And we'll know we're not going to wait a week to find out what happens in these places, especially if it's a big win for Kamala.
Right. Like if Florida flips blue and they're calling it early, you could get to a point where we could be 3, 4 days later, not know Arizona, not know Pennsylvania, and it not matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Right. Well, then that's what I try to tell people. Everybody says, well, uh, Pennsylvania is pivotal. It's the most important one. Yeah, but only if Donald Trump gets all the other states that he expects to be red. And I just don't think that's going to happen in this time around. There's going to be some surprises of states that turn blue, like a North Carolina, um, like maybe even Florida. Some people even have their fingers crossed for Texas. I don't know that I'm putting a lot of money on Texas to flip blue, but it could happen. Frankly, if Kamala got Texas and Florida, who gives a fuck about Pennsylvania?
Yeah. I think Texas is going to hinge on Colin Allred.
Yeah,
I don't think Kamala Harris wins Texas if Ted Cruz retains. I just don't see it happening.
yeah, I agree. I
But
agree.
but I would say, I mean, obviously they count both parts of the ballot at the same time, so we'll know. But I would say if Colin Allred beats Ted Cruz, your likelihood of Kamala taking Texas goes way, way up.
I agree. What do you think happens if the night's going on and Ted is losing enough to be concerned about, enough to have to consider conceding? You think Ted then, this whiny little bitch starts screaming fraud and hoax and rig? Do you think he does that, or does he just go away and cry?
I'm thinking it's one of two things. Both of these are mostly said for humor. But I think either he whines and cries like a little bitch screaming fraud, or he goes to Cancun.
Yeah, I think Cancun would be a good spot for him. We know he's in desperation mode. I mean, this is the one thing that's bumming out all the down ballot people, the senators, the members of the House, and the lawyers and the legislators. There's no money for the down ballot folks. Whatever there is, and there's a limited amount, is going to Donald Trump for his campaign, but maybe even more so his legal fees. So all these people are being left to twist in the wind. There isn't enough money. And and
Yeah.
and when Ted was on Fox News recently, we found out how desperate he is because in a period of 45 seconds, he begged for money 6 times. That's pathetic. And I got to tell you, whenever you're trying to win somebody over, being pathetic, that's not a successful strategy.
No, it's not. And, we've talked about it before. This down ballot money is huge. There's no down ballot money. Donald Trump has co-opted all of the RNC funds, which they're not getting much in the way of donations now because he co-opted the RNC money. The people who would have donated to the RNC aren't.
Right.
They're just not. Donald Trump himself isn't getting nearly the donations he was getting before, and they're coming more and more from large dollar donors. He's not getting the small dollar donors like he was. And he's got his hand in the pocket of everybody who uses his name or likeness down ballot saying, oh, give me a cut. If you use my name in any of your promotional materials, he said it over the summer. Well, I want at least 5% if you use my name or slogans in your promotional stuff. Give me 5%, 10% or more, and I'll really notice. You might get a spot in the administration.
Right. Right. Which in itself is illegal, but doesn't seem to matter to Donald Trump at all. And apparently it doesn't matter to the DOJ. Do you think all this little shit that he's doing, we're finding out he's charging the Secret Service triple the amount in his hotels, all his little grifts. Do you think they come back to bite him in the ass once this election is over? I mean, everybody's walking on eggshells. Oh, we don't want to do anything before the election. We're afraid it's going to look
I think
political.
so.
Once it's over, does he get hit with a ton of shit over and above what he's already been hit with?
Maybe not right away,
Yeah.
but I do think eventually he's going to get hit with a bunch. And if not him, somebody will. Somewhere in the chain of where all of this, goes, whether it's his company, whether it's somebody who worked in booking or bookkeeping for Mar-a-Lago or whatever, where somebody in his organization is going to get hit with charges for this, I would believe. But first things first, before any of that happens, Merrick Garland's got to go.
Well, that's a good question. I was listening to somebody who was talking, and this is all hearsay, so I don't know if it's true, but it makes some sense um, that that Joe Biden's pissed off at Merrick Garland. Now he won't interfere on the DOJ, but he's pissed off at Merrick Garland, but not for the whole Trump thing, for doing what he did to his son, the indictment and all this other shit. Does Joe Biden in that 17-day window between the new Congress and the inauguration of Kamala Harris, does he pardon Hunter and then does he fire Merrick Garland? Would he do that just prior to the end of his term?
Well, it doesn't have to wait till the 17-day window. He only has to wait until after the election, realistically, because the Democrats have the Senate right now.
Right.
So anytime after November 6th, as far as firing Merrick Garland and appointing a new attorney general, entirely possible. That could happen. If he's as pissed as it's being reported, could happen.
But if it's
Pardoning
after
Hunter,
if it's after the election, doesn't he have to consult with Kamala too? Wouldn't he normally do that to come up with
well,
somebody?
what
He
he
doesn't
might do
have
is
to, but
doesn't have to. He could appoint somebody for that 2-month window. He could just run with an acting attorney general, having it be the next person in line,
right.
which is entirely possible. Because it could just be to prove a point to Merrick Garland of, hey, I'm sick of you, you're out of here. Kind of a parting shot.
Yeah.
But I think if he's going to pardon Hunter, I think that pardon doesn't come out until January 19th or early morning, January 20th, on his way, last minute out the door. One of his final things that he does for Hunter. I don't think, unless there's a sentencing point in between here where Hunter's going to prison,
Yeah.
I don't think Joe Biden does anything until he's almost on his way out, or he waits and doesn't pardon Hunter, and the first thing Kamala Harris does is pardon Hunter.
That's a possibility too. I mean, Hunter did break some laws, but he's being treated much harsher than anybody else is because he's Joe Biden's son and because the Republicans have been pushing it. But whether he's deserving of a pardon or not, I'd like to see Joe Biden do it just to rub it in the face of the Republicans at a point where they can't do anything about it. They can whine and cry all they want, but Joe Biden is retiring and going off in the fucking sunset, and they can fuck themselves.
I would, as much as I would like to see it for, uh, that gotcha moment or the rub it in their face moment, there is something to be said. While the president's pardon power is absolute, they would probably try to challenge the pardon in court because it's a family member.
Right.
I think I could see Kamala pardoning Hunter Biden because there's no family tie there.
Right.
And they can't challenge her pardon power.
No, no.
They could maybe try to do something if they had the House and the Senate and impeach her over it, but they're not going to have either, so it wouldn't matter.
What people have to understand too, when they talk to Kamala Harris and they try to get her to answer certain things like being different than Joe Biden or She's playing the game where you don't talk shit about the sitting president while you're the vice president, and she shouldn't anyway. He doesn't really have much to talk about. But there was a situation where Tim Walz was talking. He get a little fired up, and he says, "Yeah, we should get rid of the electoral college." And then, of course, the uh, the campaign said, "No, you got to fucking cool that out. You got to cool that out." And people are looking at that saying, "Well, Kamala Harris wants the electoral college." No, they just don't want you talking about shit like that before the election. After the election, I wouldn't be surprised if Kamala Harris is all over getting rid of the electoral college. Tim just spoke too quickly.
Could be. Problem is, with getting rid of the electoral college, it is in the Constitution. It would take an amendment.
Is it in the Constitution?
Yep.
Really? I didn't know that. I thought it was something that was added later.
I'm pretty sure it is. If it's not in the base Constitution, it's in one of the amendments. Um,
I'm gonna Google that shit because I don't honestly know.
I am pretty sure it would take a constitutional amendment, and if that's the case, that would be something that they even getting rid of the filibuster wouldn't solve it with the Senate because you would need 67.
Okay, this is what I have here. The founding fathers established the Electoral College in the Constitution in part as a compromise between the election of the president by a vote in Congress and election of the president by popular vote of qualified citizens. So it's a compromise in between Congress and a popular vote. So apparently there is Electoral College in the Constitution, and that's an entirely different story. Like you say, getting rid of something in the Constitution, that's a much bigger process than just making a statement and voting it out.
Right. It would take 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and 3/4 of all of the states agreeing that it would happen. That could take a decade to get done.
It could take longer than that. Aren't they still working on the Equal Rights Amendment from in the 70s when I was a kid?
Yes, there's actually I took a government class like 5, 6 years ago now, maybe a little longer. There is one that is out there that if enough states passed it, um, would set up one member of the House of Representatives per every 100,000 in population. It could still
Oh,
be passed and ratified. And this goes back to like 1787. They've been trying to get it passed.
wow.
But it's still out there. It is still, they could still pass it.
So it passed the
Just
House
nobody,
and the Senate. It's just got to pass.
all the states. And it never passed 3/4 of the states back then. And we've just been adding more and more states since then. And it's never gotten enough votes to get added.
And you'll never get the Republicans to agree to that because they hold all the rural spots and Democrats hold
City.
city, and it would give Democrats a clear advantage if that
I
was
did,
in place.
I want to say I did the math at the time, and it would end up with something like 3,000 members of the U.S. House of Representatives or something like that.
Yeah, that's a little
Like, we
that's
can't
a
get
little
stuff
excessive.
done with 425. We're not going to get stuff done with 3,000.
Right, right. I think what should happen before we do anything with the House, we ought to think of some different process for senators. I mean, the idea that Wyoming has two senators and New York has two senators is fucking ridiculous.
Unfortunately, I did a longer form video over on my YouTube page about it, about amendments and what it all takes to do them. Under the article of the Constitution where it talks about what can or cannot be an amendment, it specifically says no amendment can adjust the equal delegation of senators per state.
Wow. So we're stuck with
So
that.
what we could do is we could decide to go, instead of two, if we wanted to go to three, we could go to three per state. We could go to four per state, but we're stuck with it being the same number per every state.
The same ratio. It would be the same
Yeah.
ratio. You know,
Yeah.
states with nobody in them, like Wyoming, would get the same representation as New York or California or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. They put this Constitution together in 1776, and there's been some changes in the world. I don't think they ever imagined that there would be 350 million people in the United States of America and 50 states for that matter. What were they dealing with? 13 states then? Much different situation.
They were dealing with 13 states. They were dealing with, just the east coast of this giant landmass. We didn't even know how much was, how far west it went.
Right.
And it was never meant to be perfect. The the thing with the senators, it was a compromise because even then you were hearing things about the small states versus the big states, population centers versus rural, and they were worried about the bigger states, even then, like New York, having a bigger say than a small state like Rhode Island,
Right.
that just didn't have landmass, didn't have people by comparison, and they were worried that they were going to get outvoted and shot down at every turn. They were also worried about the southern states where the bulk of their representation or their people were enslaved people.
Yeah.
That was part of it too, but they wanted to make sure that they had their equal protection so that they didn't lose their slavery. That was the other half of it.
That makes sense. I tell you what, Eric, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Eric from Iowa is with us, giving us some insights about what's going on in Iowa and across the country. We've talked a lot about the House of Representatives, the Senate, the Constitution, and all that stuff, but we've got to get to the news that seems to be the most important. We're 2 weeks away from the election or thereabouts. And from all I can tell, in spite of what the polls might tell you, in spite of what the media might tell you, Donald Trump and the entire Republican Party seems to be circling the bowl. I mean, nothing is working for them. They look stupid every time they open their mouths, and it's not just Donald Trump, but especially Donald Trump. But whether it be Mike Johnson or any of these other idiots, it's just nothing's working. You would think they'd change it up, but they don't.
The problem is they're hamstrung because they've hitched their wagon to Donald Trump.
Right.
There is a chunk of people who will only vote for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has got such a grip on such a section of the Republican base that you speak against Donald Trump or you're not going in favor of the things Donald Trump wants, you're a rhino when you're out and they won't vote for you either. So they got to walk this fine line of appealing to independents while not pissing off the Trump supporters, while also trying to not sound like complete imbeciles. And you just can't do it.
Well, yeah, it's not possible, and they're going to fuck around and find out. That's the thing with Donald Trump, though. When I look at this, I look at, and this is my estimation, this is my opinion, but I think Kamala Harris is running one of the best presidential campaigns I've seen in my lifetime. Conversely, I think Donald Trump is running one of the worst campaigns in presidential history. And granted, that's 64 years, but Donald Trump has no money. He has no ground game. And every time he does something, he always says the wrong thing. I mean, I've always said, just let him talk because he'll fuck himself up. But he goes to Detroit and talks about how shitty Detroit is. He talks about weird things. We'll talk about this later about the size of a dead golfer's appendage. That was interesting. I don't know how that came up or why that was a thing. But Donald Trump doesn't know how to campaign. I mean, he's going to states and campaigning that he knows he can't win. That makes no sense, wasting time there. I mean, we gave shit to Hillary for not going to Michigan, but this fucker's going to the wrong places and wasting time and money to try to win states. That's just not possible. But recently, he had this big campaign event that obviously maybe turned the tide for him, and I'm speaking sarcastically. He decided to work a shift at a McDonald's and make fries. And I'm going, my God, dude. I mean, this goes back to Kamala Harris claiming she worked at McDonald's when she was in college. And the Republicans are going, no, she didn't. Like, this is a big deal. Well, of course she did. Who would lie about that? But he specifically went there so he could say, see, I worked at McDonald's longer than Kamala Harris. Yeah, but she also committed 34 felonies. So, it's kind of a wash. That whole situation with him at McDonald's today was just fucking ridiculous.
Well, did you hear about all of it though?
No, go ahead and enlighten us with what else is going, because there's got to be more around it.
It was closed.
Really?
They closed the store till 4 p.m. local time at that location. The employees that worked that day had been vetted by Secret Service.
Wow.
The customers that came through the drive lane were vetted by Secret Service. They had practiced how fast the cars were going to pull up from one window to the next to do this pre-recorded thing. Like the whole thing was staged just so he could stand there in an apron, open the window, wave at reporters, and talk to them and stage a photo op.
Wow. He loves the
Like the
photo
whole
ops.
thing, none of it was him working an actual shift. He was working at a closed location because they could not protect him if it was a real, fully functional McDonald's, because there's no way the Secret Service would know who's pulling up in that next car.
I got to be honest, whether it was safe as far as potential assassins or not, putting Donald Trump in front of hot grease, that almost certainly will go wrong. I'm surprised he didn't burn himself and end up on the ground, curled up and crying like a little girl.
I saw somebody talking about it on TikTok ahead of it, and they were asking, how easy do you think it would be to convince Donald Trump that the fry oil is too hot, and to cool it off, you need to drop a basket full of ice in the fryer? And if you know anything about fryers, it goes whoosh, and that hot oil goes everywhere.
Right. Or what you could do, Donald Trump says, Donald, we just started this thing up special for you. We don't know if it's hot enough. Why don't you stick your finger in there and just see what you think?
I think he'd be dumb enough to do it.
I
He'd
think
be
you would
dumb
be
enough to do
down.
either one of them because he doesn't have a clue.
But see
And then
the whole point of this is trying to own a libtard, trying to own Kamala Harris, that she didn't work at McDonald's. Does he not get this isn't really an important issue in this whole campaign? There are bigger issues.
no, he doesn't have a clue. He's desperate. He's trying to appeal to middle class by being, see, I did the middle class thing. I worked at McDonald's. No, Donnie, you did not work at McDonald's. You pretended to work at McDonald's, much like you pretended to be president.
Yeah, when I was a traffic reporter in Minnesota here, the MTC was the Metro Transit Commission. They handled all the buses, the big ass buses, the articulated buses, the two-piece buses. And they had something called a bus rodeo, and they had people that were really good at driving buses, and they go through obstacle courses and all this stuff. It was kind of cool for what it was. But because I was the traffic reporter and I had a little notoriety, they said, we're going to have you out as a special celebrity guest to drive a bus. I go, are you fucking high? I have enough trouble with a compact car. You're going to put me in a bus? Well, they did. And I drove this articulated bus through a obstacle course, and it did not go well. It did not go well. I should not. So what I'm saying is, even though I drove a bus that particular day, this motherfucker is not a bus driver. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, exactly. And, going through a staged day of very select orders and just a few cars in a closed restaurant is not the same as working a busy McDonald's during any sort of a rush. I've seen our local McDonald's. I've seen how many cars and how far backed up it can get during certain points of the day.
Right.
He would have been lost crying, and he would have been overwhelmed in 2 seconds just at what our local McDonald's does. He wouldn't have been able to handle it. But instead he was able to put on this show and act like he was a McDonald's worker. When I did my second TikTok about this, because I did two, because I didn't know about it being closed and everybody being vetted and the whole thing being staged when I did my first video. I said, if any other candidate ever pre-Donald Trump had done something like this, I don't care if it would have been 2 weeks before the election, their party would have dumped that person, period.
Yeah, well,
They would have been done. They would have come out, heads of the party would have come out and said, don't vote for this guy, vote for their opponent.
well, you remember what happened to Michael Dukakis when he rode on that tank and wore that fucking goofy helmet. That didn't do him very well.
Yeah. I don't remember that specifically, but I
Well,
remember Michael Dukakis not winning.
no, he did not win, and as one of his promotional things, he was with the military, and they put him on top of a tank, and he put his goofy hat on, and he looked like a dope, and he got so much shit about that after the fact. That was one of the reasons why he lost the race. But that's what Donald Trump does. He continues to do things that nobody in their right mind would do. I mean, he goes into towns like Detroit and tells people how shitty their town is, and you're trying to win Michigan? Please, motherfucker, are you that stupid? He goes and campaigns in states he cannot win. And then he's in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, the hometown of the great golfer Arnie Palmer. And he decides to be clever or funny or act like he knows Arnold Palmer and explains how Arnold would go after a round of golf and take his clothes off and go into the shower. And boy, oh boy, everybody was amazed, suggesting that Arnold Palmer was well endowed. Endowed. I don't know what that has to do with anything. First of all, Arnold's dead. That's a little disrespectful to the dead. And I'd heard that his daughter basically said in an interview later, he goes, Arnold hated that guy. He hated Donald Trump.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that Arnold Palmer hated Donald Trump. Even the people who claim to love Donald Trump hate Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's mostly an act. So that doesn't surprise me. But what in the hell is he doing talking about Arnold Palmer and his size? And I'm surprised that didn't conclude with Donald Trump saying, but he doesn't have anything on me.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm surprised he didn't say something like that. And because that's not what Donald Trump thinks like. Everything with him is the biggest, the best, the most impressive. And was that the point when Fox News cut away from his interview or his rally to cover the Kamala Harris rally that was going on at the same time?
Yeah, I think so.
Because they did. They cut away from his rally to cover Kamala.
What's interesting too is the gaslighting that even the minions, the Trumplafucks do. I did a live, and it was one of the podcasts, yesterday's podcast, and these people would come on and say they were suggesting that when Kamala admonished those people about being at the wrong rally and they needed to go to the smaller one down the road, they were suggesting that this person shouted out, Jesus is king, and she responded that way. So she must be a heathen. She must be anti Christian. Well, that's not at all what was said. What they yelled was lies. But these Trumplafucks will do anything to make Kamala look bad or make them look right. And they would try to pawn this off. It's just, this is why when I'm on lives, I block every Trumplafuck I can. I got a couple moderators and I'm blocking. And somebody once said, one of the moderators just mutes them. I go, do not mute them. They're still around. They still can be of danger to the platform. Block those motherfuckers. Get them out of there. And Gray Captain, who is the moderator, he says, well, it hurts your ratios and your numbers after the live. I don't give a fuck about the numbers. I'm just doing it to do it. And whoever comes, great. If they don't come, I don't, I'm not worried about it. But you just got to eradicate these fucks. And I know you're doing it with your TikTok now too.
Yep. Well, whenever I'm in your lives, I keep meaning to do another one of these days. But whenever I'm on the one live I did block the couple Trumplafucks that came in. I didn't get very many, but I also didn't have very many followers at that time either. I think I was just barely over the 1,000 mark at that point. But even though I'm not a moderator for you, when I go get in, if I see a Trumplafuck, I go in, I block them so I don't see them and they don't find my page.
Right.
But I'm on other people's videos. I was on a video, I don't remember what the video was even on, and somebody chimed in something about I think it was it was something about like a classic cartoon or something, and they made a comment about, well, enjoy it now because you won't enjoy it under Kamala or something. I just went in, nope, you're gone. I blocked them immediately. Like, they're not even commenting on my stuff, and I blocked them immediately because I don't want to deal with them. They don't bring anything to the platform. They don't bring anything to the conversation. It's just better to get rid of them than to deal with them.
Yeah, people come to me and they say all the same things. Trump 2024, like that makes a difference. Or they come and say, "Well, I like to see how you talk after November 5th." You know what? I'm going to talk the same way, but I'm going to be giggling a lot, laughing a lot at these motherfuckers because they don't even know what's going to hit them. They have no clue what's going to hit them.
No, they don't. I know after November, when we're right, and especially if places like Iowa, Florida, and Texas flip, people like Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Rick Scott lose. I'm going to do several videos saying, how is it that this dumb bald white guy sitting in his living room or his car was able to call it
Exactly.
and said, and I saw looking at the poll, not looking at the polls, looking at the trends, looking at the fundraising, looking what they're talking about, and just went, there's no way. There's no way this happens. But the media didn't cover it. I'm going to be calling them out on it.
I
And then
agree.
to
I am too.
those Trump humpers that are going to come back in, no, you didn't add anything to the conversation. Now, if you're a Republican and you come back in and you want to talk policy, you want to talk substance, okay, I will listen to that.
Yeah.
If you have something to say beyond Trump 2024 or you're a libtard, I will listen to policy, I will listen to substance.
I don't know that I will because it's not even if they're willing to talk about policy, if they employ the same tactics by just talking over you and talking loud and not listening to anything. I At this stage of the game, I find very little redeeming about any Republican. Not that every Republican is bad as MAGA or as bad as Donald Trump, but they've been complicit with him for 9 years. Even though they might be better, might be smarter, they've still been complicit. I see them as a speck of cancer waiting to metastasize. So I think we need to eradicate all of them.
Oh, I mean, I do kind of agree that way, but my kind of what I was going with is I would at least listen to a policy discussion if you want to have a discussion. But and you want to bring something to talk about. But just the being loud, the shouting the same slogans, oh, you're gonna find out, just wait and see. When you're not adding anything to a conversation, you have no business to be there. You're gonna get blocked. I don't want to deal with you.
Well, you're more hopeful than I am because I haven't met a Republican yet that I can talk to. They don't listen to anything, they only talk. And when you give them facts and truth and all that stuff, they act like they don't know about it. They act like they hadn't heard you or they play these games. I mean, a good example Jake Tapper on CNN, who I'm not a fan of as of late, has got Mike Johnson. And he's asking Mike Johnson about Donald Trump saying, the dangers of the enemy within. And then, of course, Mike Johnson says, well, of course, everybody knows he's talking about the terrorists and stuff. And Tapper goes, no, no, no. Here's another clip where he says it's Adam Schiff and some other Americans. And of course, Mike Johnson can't address that issue. He can't because he's afraid he's going to piss off Donald Trump. But the best part was when Tapper started asking him about Donald Trump's comments about Arnold Palmer's appendage. And in doing that, in doing that, Tapper said the word penis like 3 or 4 times. And you could see it was really causing some anxiety in Mike Johnson. And finally he goes, stop saying that. Now I don't know if his sensibilities were hurt or he was getting a little aroused. I'm not exactly sure which it was, but he did not like that being on television.
I don't know, because remember, wasn't there a story about Mike Johnson having some sort of a hack with his son or stepson or something, where they both had apps on their phones that monitored the other one's porn usage, something like that.
Yeah, apparently he's okay with dealing with his kids' junk. It's just other people's junk, former dead golfers.
Yeah, he's weird. He's going to be irrelevant after the election, whether or not he gets reelected. And I don't know enough about his district to say he could be in jeopardy, but if he's got enough sane people in his district who see the way he acts and behaves, they got to be sick of his shit too.
Well, we still have those people worried about, well, he's not going to certify the votes. We need to clarify again because most people have gotten it, but the fact of the matter is Mike Johnson will not be the Speaker of the House on January 6th. He just won't. The Democrats are going to win the House of Representatives, whether it be by 1 or 100. It doesn't really matter. Hakeem Jeffries will then be the Speaker of the House, and Mike Johnson won't have say over shit.
Yep, that is true. And to further clarify, I've done a couple TikToks on this. Um, One of the other things I hear people asking about is, well, what if Mike Johnson just doesn't swear in the new Congress?
Can't.
Well, that's not a thing. Oh, as of basically start of business, January 3rd, the House of Representatives does not exist until they select a speaker.
Right.
Nothing else happens till they select a speaker. Then the minute they select Hakeem Jeffries, the House parliamentarian will be the one to swear in. I think it's the House parliamentarian. But anyway, somebody swears in Hakeem Jeffries, the new speaker. Once he's sworn in, then the new speaker swears in the rest of the House.
Right.
The outgoing speaker has no part in any of it other than potentially taking that same oath with everybody else if they won their reelection.
Right. Right. And well, the other thing is, when I was talking about this a long time ago, apparently there is a part in the Constitution that says you cannot delay a certification or a swearing in of a member of the House or the Senate uh, as long as they've been elected. You just can't. There's no room for that. I mean, it's kind of like the situation with Pence and the presidential certification. You know, he always says, "Well, I did the right thing." You did the only thing you could fucking do. Don't act like a goddamn hero. And the same goes for the House and the Senate. They must certify it. They must or swear these people in according to the Constitution. Now, if you want to change the Constitution, you can do that, but you better get started now because it won't happen.
Right. And you're right. There is something in there about the swearing in of the new Congress having to take place, and like the order I mentioned is exactly what would happen. And after he becomes Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries can't just refuse to swear in the members of the opposition party.
No, no, he
He
can't.
wouldn't. But he can't. He's not allowed to. It's not a thing that he gets to choose to do. He must. The other
Yeah.
thing is with the certification process itself, the reason we had the problem that we had in 2020 was this old rule. The old law was one member of the House, one senator. If they both objected to the same state, they went back to their own separate chambers. They talked about it. They held a vote on whether or not they would certify that state. They came back after that vote, and then they said, yeah, we agree on Georgia. We agree on Iowa. We agree on whatever. And they'd move on. And if they didn't agree, and if both houses didn't agree, then there's a whole other issue. In 2021 or 2022, they passed the Electoral Count Reform Act,
Right.
which Joe Biden signed. It now takes 20% of the House and 20% of the Senate. That's 20 senators. And what would that be? Like 80 members of the House of Representatives?
Oh, at least probably more over 100. Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know. I'm doing rough math in my head, but doesn't matter. It's, a lot of people. There wasn't that many that were objecting out of both chambers last time. They only got away with it because it was one each.
Yeah. And it didn't work then. I mean,
No, but they found a loophole. Democrats looked at that loophole and said, "Oh, well, this didn't work last time, but you're going to try to exploit this same loophole? Fuck you! We're closing the loophole."
yeah, well, it's kind of like Georgia too. They wanted to be able to delay or deny the certification of the election in Georgia. Well, when they said that, people are going, "Oh my God, what's going to happen? They're going to deny it. They're going to delay it. They're going to." Well, the fact of the matter is, the state constitution and state law says you cannot do that. They're just spewing bullshit to create some chaos and some fear. And when it goes to court, The judge goes, "Of course you can't do that," and that's the situation they have now. They're trying to figure out other ways around it because they can't win the election in a fair race. They've got to try to find a way to cheat. But here's what we know: since 2020, they've tried all kinds of things, and they've failed every time because there's no basis in law for the shit they're spewing.
Exactly. And with the whole Georgia thing, they lost like three separate cases in the span of 2 days
Yeah.
over all their changes. They wanted the hand recounts. Judge said Georgia law doesn't allow for mandatory counting like that, and there's no money in the budget
Or time.
allocated or the time. You know, with everything that we've passed by the legislature for these rules, it doesn't fit these new rules you passed. You don't get to just change Georgia law
Right.
to fit this. You have to, if you want this change, you got to get the legislature to pass it and pass appropriate money to make it happen as well.
Well, that's where people get so nervous. You hear the Republicans say, "We're going to do this, we're going to do that." And they just assume that they will be able to do that. But as we saw with the election in 2020 and the 60 court cases and stuff, just because they say it doesn't mean it's a thing. Just because they say it doesn't mean it's legal.
Right.
99% of the time, it's not legal. So it's not really going to happen. This is what they do. They say shit to try to create noise and make the Democrats look bad. The whole thing with Joe Biden and the bribe and the impeachment, they were never going to do that. They knew they could never do that because they had no evidence. But they'll keep spewing this stuff in hopes that some people will get a bad taste in their mouth for Joe Biden or Democrats in general.
Oh, exactly. Because they hope that if you say it long enough and loud enough, people will assume it is true.
Yeah.
And for some people, that is true. They do end up believing that it is true.
Yeah, there are plenty of MAGA and the base that believe it, but I'm sad to say there are some Democrats that believe it too, because I hear from them. You no doubt hear from them every day. "Oh, I'm terrified. This is going to happen." No, it's not going to fucking happen. Just stop listening to Trump-fuck bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of sick of some people on the left too, some creators, and you'll know of a couple I'm thinking of that they'll come out, oh, well, polls are saying John Tester's losing in Montana. That's the ball game, folks. We've lost the Senate. You know, they come out, they're looking for a doom and gloom story to cover. And, you know, while I may say, come out and cover it, well, yeah, polls saying John Tester's losing. I don't understand why he's losing.
I
He
don't
should
believe
win.
he's
He will
losing.
probably win, and I don't think he's going to lose. And then I will go into why you shouldn't trust the polls, fuck the polls, and go from there. We've come to find out some of these are paid for by Republicans, or who are they asking? Or like you and Arlene Unfiltered were talking about, there was the one poll that they did where they showed that Kamala Harris got a lower percentage than Joe Biden, but it was still higher than 50%.
Yeah,
And they were comparing two different polls with two different people, and they tried to spin that number and say, "Oh, well, Kamala Harris is losing ground with this group." Well, no. How do you know she's losing ground? The last poll didn't involve her.
right, right. Yeah, and the thing is she's still up by what, 20, 30 points. What difference does it make? The bottom line is who wins the fucking election, and she's going to win the election. The polls are just, I keep hearing from the polls. And like you said, once this is all said and done, if you and I and a lot of other people are right, and it is a significant win, maybe even a landslide, the question does has to have to be asked to the mainstream media. And I'm talking about the left side media. Like you said, how is it I knew and you knew and Will knew and Ed knew, but and Old Soul knew, but uh, they didn't know? There's only two things that could be working there: incompetence, or it was intentional to manipulate the people watching. And if they're doing either, why are we watching them? Why do we continue to watch them?
Exactly. And that's kind of where I'm at with the mainstream media. I don't watch a lot of the mainstream media as far as like going to turn on their broadcast.
I don't as
I
much
may
anymore either.
I may go to their website and read a story or something. Occasionally I will listen to like a clip just to get the actual like tone, inflection of what they were saying as part of whatever I'm talking about. Most of the time, if I'm talking about a story that I've gotten from them, it's me reading what they're putting out, going, okay, well, I see this, I pick up a few pieces out of it, going, okay, this is the gist of the story. And then I get rid of their entire spin and tell it like I see it.
Right,
Because
exactly.
most of it, they could take the best news possible. Oh, Kamala Harris raised $1 billion, and they would find a way to somehow prove that Donald Trump is going to win the election, even though she raised $1 billion.
Yeah, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. If she raised $1 billion in 80 days and he raised a third of that, please tell me how it's a close poll. It just makes no logical sense. And that's why I feel confident that when the election happens, there's going to be a lot of surprised people. But you know who are two motherfuckers that aren't going to be surprised? You and me and anybody trusting what we tell them, because we know what's going to happen. There's a lot of people out there that I hear from too that say, oh, she's going to win in a big way. Not because they're psychics or because we're soothsayers. We're looking at the facts. We're not listening to bullshit. The facts say different than what the polls said. And since we can't trust the polls, we know they're notoriously wrong. Why would we put any faith in them? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. When you see places like the Villages doing golf cart rallies for
Yeah.
Kamala and miles long golf cart parades, effectively going to go vote for Kamala, whether by drop off or whatever they're doing down there, how that's an area that Donald Trump carried with no effort. He didn't
Yeah.
have to do anything to carry the Villages, and he could lose the Villages. That tells me Florida has a chance of flipping blue. That just
Absolutely.
it screams that there's a chance. When you hear news stories of 81-year-old lady going to vote for the first time because her husband wouldn't let her vote before, and you hear, "Oh, I'm not voting for Donald." What does that tell you? I saw another one done by CNN. Two older guys sitting at a restaurant in Georgia, and the one guy goes, "I have voted Republican my entire life. I'm not this time.
Yeah.
I'm voting for a better choice."
Yeah.
And they had to drag it out of him. He didn't quite say he was voting for Kamala, but he pretty much said he wasn't voting for Donald Trump.
If you're a normal Donald Trump voter and you choose to vote for Kamala, good on you. If you're a normal Republican and a Donald Trump voter and you just decide not to vote, I'm cool with that too. I was curious. You were talking about the villages down in Florida, and that's an interesting area. It's a big area, really big area, bigger than I think people understand. But is there any truth to the stories that they are, they're having the golf cart parades and all that stuff? Is there any truth to the story that they're having the elderly orgies for Kamala too?
I haven't heard that they're for Kamala, but I've heard that they are happening.
That's the funniest thing to me is that they have such a high rate of STDs in there. Here are people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s saying, "Well, I can't get pregnant anymore. My kids are all gone. Fuck it, let's just go nuts." I mean, when I hear that, it gives me some hope that you're 80 years old and you still have the wherewithal and the interest in this whole nitty gritty activity.
Yeah, that is something to be said.
And why do
Uh,
old people have so many STDs? Where are they getting this from?
well, if they're really having the big of group as what you hear is they're just going with pretty much anybody, the way it sounds anyway, is all it takes is one person to get one.
Uh,
And, you know, it just spreads from one person to the next to the next. That's the way I understand it. But
well,
I don't know.
I will tell you this, and I'll probably get some heat over this, but I don't care. I get heat all the time anyway. So what I hear about the villages is what I wish high school was like, because it was a much different situation.
You know,
I mean,
that wouldn't have been all
STD,
bad if that was what high school was like.
STDs aside,
Yeah. I mean, I've heard rumors that down there, they go everywhere in their golf carts. And I've heard, and I haven't, I've kind of been looking for it with the Harris golf cart rallies to see if I see them anywhere. But I've heard they put the different colored loofahs, the sponges, on their golf carts, and that's how
Loofahs.
you know what they're into.
I wonder if the big studs in villages have notches carved in their walkers. That would be kind of cool.
I wasn't expecting you to say
No,
that.
I wasn't expecting to say that. It's just shit that comes to me in the moment. But it's just I kid about it, but in my being 64 years old, you kind of go, oh, you kind of hope it's like that.
Well, you were talking about being almost 80, and that reminded me of something I heard Donald Trump had just said recently. He said, "Oh, Joe Biden, he's so old. He's 81, 82 years old, but I'm not that close to 80."
Yeah, you are, bitch.
And he was taking some heat for not understanding basic math. But that goes back to he was getting deposed somewhere. I think it was in the Letitia James biz, civil suit,
Yeah.
and he was on the stand or something. They asked him his age, and he couldn't say 77. He had to say 77 because he couldn't admit out loud that he was actually 77.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got some issues. He's got some ego issues. Um, and I've said all along that because of who Donald Trump is, his narcissism, his just ignorance and arrogance, that it's going to get worse as we get closer to the election. Now we're 2 weeks out. How much? I mean, it's fucking crazy right now. How much crazier can it get between now and November 5th?
It depends. It depends on if he stays like he's been doing and staying away from the mainstream media. He's hiding away onto friendly territory.
Yeah.
He's only really going on Fox. He's dodging everybody else. Didn't do 60 Minutes. He's ducking the other debates. Canceling events. He was supposed to have the NRA event in Georgia, canceled that. Was supposed to do something on NBC or CNBC, canceled that. And even on Fox,
He was going to be in
he was
Savannah
on,
too with the NRA, and he canceled that.
yeah. And then on Fox, when he was on there, one of the things he was griping about was, well, maybe you shouldn't play any negative ads about me between now and the election. He was on air on Fox and Friends live saying they shouldn't really be playing any negative ads about him because, oh, back in the old days you didn't play any negative ads about me, you didn't do any of that before. Well, no shit, Donald, they didn't do it because you bought up all the airtime. You
Right.
don't got the money to buy the airtime now. Kamala Harris does, so they're going to go where someone's spending them some money.
Well, it's the same thing as where he says, you fact check me, but you don't fact check Kamala Harris. Well, Kamala Harris isn't lying, and you are lying. That's the whole basis and the reason for fact checking is when somebody lies. When you say something that's not true, somebody has to fix it. Otherwise, they get sued. And we know what happened to Fox News. I can't imagine any other network, including Fox, that wants to get sued again.
Well, look what this thought just popped into my head. But look what happened with Donald Trump and E. Jean Carroll.
Yeah.
Okay, he defames her $5 million the first time. What was the second one? Like
90,
88,
88,
90
90.
million,
Yeah.
something like that. So they went from 5 to 90. Okay. Take the Dominion case. If Dominion takes Fox back to court and says, hey, look, they're still spreading the same bullshit they did last time. They already settled for 787 or 767, whatever that number was. How much do you think it's going to take before Dominion says, no, we want more? And if they get it in front of a jury, how far do you think a jury would take it? We talking 10 billion? We
Yeah.
talking 15? We
Yeah.
talking 50 billion?
And I have to wonder too, Dominion has sued Fox News. They're suing Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell. We know what Donald Trump has said and what he will probably say after he loses on November 5th. And when he's no longer a president or a presidential candidate and he's just a private citizen, a loser of a private citizen, I wouldn't be surprised if Dominion sued him too.
I wouldn't be, but at the same point, the only reason I could see them not, and is because now the way I understand it is when you win that court case, the losing party usually pays the attorney fees of the winning party. But Donald Trump ain't gonna have no money.
Right. Well, that's
He's gonna
it.
be broke.
That
So
that's
our,
exactly right.
you can only get so much blood from a turnip, and he's not gonna have the money to pay that whatever exorbitant legal fees they're gonna have, whatever this defamation claim would come to. Are they going to waste their time and money paying these attorneys up front, knowing they're not going to get any money on the backside?
Well, regarding something you said earlier, we were talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she was on Infowars with Alex Jones and they were spewing this Dominion shit. First of all, Alex Jones hasn't learned anything. Second of all, Marjorie Taylor Greene is likely to get sued again. But last of all, why the fuck are they still on Infowars? Didn't they start liquidating that shit?
The way I understand it is there's a date here in early November when that stuff gets liquidated. So
Wow.
I think up until that date, I think he can still use like the equipment up until the sale date. The way I understand it now, I could be wrong, and maybe somebody else knows more than I do, but I thought it wasn't until November when everything gets shut down and liquidated. Um, but they are in the process of, cataloging everything for the auction and figuring out what's all there, and set pieces and everything, and getting ready for it. But maybe they're letting him use it. I didn't actually see the clip, so maybe it was just him sitting in front of a cell phone recording it, like this, like what we're doing,
Yeah.
and he's just using the Infowars brand at this point. I don't know.
I would think he loses the Infowars brand too, ultimately, because
I,
that has a value in the whole thing. Not much to me, but generally it
I,
does.
I mean, $5 is $5, I guess.
$5 is $5. You know what I hope happens is when they sell it, some very wealthy guy buys it and then turns it into a complete LGBTQ network. That would be perfect.
Yeah, or at least maybe scrap the Infowars brand, but use all of the equipment for something like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
I
that
mean,
brand is tainted.
yeah, it's going to be a little tough to stick with that. Maybe they sell that info brand to some dipshit for $1.50, somebody who's no good and is going to be throwing info wars out there. The people will still flock to it. They will still
Well,
flock to it.
well, maybe Mike Lindell can reach around his couch cushions and come up with $2 for it. That's about all he's probably got left anymore.
Yeah. When you mentioned Mike Lindell, and I'm thinking about Mike Johnson, and you use the term reach around, it makes me a little queasy. Makes me a little fucking queasy.
Wasn't
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah, let's do couch talk. And Mike Johnson go, don't say that. It gets
Yeah, but
me.
they got to worry about JD Vance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, where do you think JD Vance shakes out in this whole thing? He's been kind of quiet recently, which is probably good for him because he's going to look like a complete asshole when this is all said and done. I don't know how much of a career he has left. He has a couple of years in the Senate, but he isn't going
Uh,
to get. He's going to fade away quick.
yeah, unless he finds a way of somehow rebranding himself, because he seems to be able to be pretty good at doing that, and somehow, keeps low for 2 years, pops back up in two, rides it out the last two of his first term as a senator, and then maybe he struggles and maybe tries to get reelected, but just keeps his head down and stays out of public sight for the most part.
Yeah,
Maybe, but if he doesn't do something, he's going to be out of public sight, out of public mind. He's not going to have a big future in politics. I mean, somebody asked in your live the other day, I think the one that you're doing as the podcast for yesterday,
right.
um, was asking who the Republican candidate is for 2028.
I don't
Well,
know.
they don't have a deep bench.
No,
They have pushed everybody else away. Somebody will come to the forefront. I'm thinking maybe as a guess right now, a Chris Christie and Nikki Haley, maybe a
probably
Vivek
Nikki.
Ramaswamy.
Well, they better
But
start developing it on November 6th because it's going to be a rough road to hoe come 2028.
whoever it is going to start putting stuff together, slowly starting getting candidates that they're backing going into the midterms and try to get inroads with midterm candidates, et cetera. And I can tell you this, I guarantee you, whoever it is will not be MAGA, will not be using the MAGA brand, will not be talking about Christian nationalist values, Project 2025 values. They are probably whoever runs in 2028, and for that matter, in the midterms in 2026, is going to be talking about uh, going back to fiscal conservatism and things like that. They're going to be back on that kick. They're going to get away from the 1950s policy conservatism like they are now.
But even if they do that, they still have Roe v. Wade hanging around their neck. They're not going to get away from that under any circumstances. Kamala might get it codified, which would be good, but they're still the ones responsible for putting the women in the position they're in now.
They will, but getting it codified and getting it out where we don't have the draconian laws in the states, that will get it off the forefront of people's minds.
True.
And people would be more likely to be a little more forgiving, especially if you're starting to talk about fiscal conservative policies. And that also depends on how far Kamala Harris wants to go. One of the things I've seen some creators talking about again is they're back on, well, if Kamala wins, is she going to push for universal health care? And would you be willing to fund universal health care with your taxes going up? Number I keep seeing getting tossed around, somebody came up with $5,000 a year increase in taxes for universal health care.
That'd be about
Would
400 a
you,
month,
but yeah,
which is
and what,
way cheaper than healthcare as it is now.
right. And that's what a lot of the left leaning creators that I'm seeing talk about are coming out with. And they're saying, yeah, when you add in my premiums, my deductible, my co-pays, my co-insurance,
Yeah.
my what I pay out of my check for Medicare, what goes in if we do it like Britain does, that also has your pension. So there would go Social Security. So what I pay a month in Social Security, I would save money
Yeah.
in the long run at
Yeah.
$5,000 a month.
Republicans will never tell you that, but if you look past the end of your nose, you can realize. I mean, yes, it does. I mean,
For
it
5,000 a year.
it may not even be 5,000 a year if we can get wealthy people to pay their fair share.
Right.
It may be less than that, but the bottom line is, I know people paying $1,000 a month or more for a family of four. Wife, husband, two kids, and that's fucking crazy. And then
Yeah.
on top of it, only getting 80/20 and getting buried with hospital costs if something should go wrong.
Right. I don't remember what the figures were, but for single person, the place I work, open enrollment is coming up, so we have access to look at all the plans and everything now. And was looking at it, and I think for a single person like myself, I want to say it's something like 15-20 bucks every 2 weeks. Not
Right.
bad.
No,
That's before you get into the breakdown of what they cover.
but that's with your
But
company. That's not on your
right.
own.
But then you start going into then when you get up to like you plus family, I want to say it's like 168 bucks
Yeah,
every 2 weeks. That covers you, a spouse, and all kids. I mean, it starts getting pricey.
it
You go to a
does.
universal healthcare system, couple things that they can fix. One, prior authorizations go away.
Right.
So there's none of this BS of a desk jockey sitting behind it going, well, do they really need this screening? Do they really need this test? Do they really need this medicine? Let's send it back, ask the doctor again to reconsider. Or we'll only approve it if you've tried 12 other things first. All that goes away. Two, you're not tied to a job because of your insurance. I know people who refuse to look for a different job because they don't want to start over on insurance.
Right. Right. And that shouldn't
Because
happen.
they go, well, if I start over, I got this and I got that and I got to deal with, I got to re-get approved by the new insurance, or I got to wait, I'm on insulin and I got to wait 6 months for my insurance to kick in, or I got to wait 30 days. I mean, a company I worked for 2 years ago started in December. My insurance from my previous job had run out. Didn't become eligible till the 1st of January. No,
Right.
I take that back. I didn't become eligible till the 1st of February because it was the first of the month following 30 days of continuous employment. So because
Right.
I didn't start on the 1st of December, I didn't get eligible till February, and insurance didn't kick in till either the end of February, early March.
Right.
Now, I didn't have any health issues. I didn't have anything I was worried about. I'm like, I'll be fine. 3 months without, whatever, I can deal with it. But you got somebody on insulin, they can't afford to go without.
No,
And
no, they
they go,
can't.
well, I could switch jobs to this company down the road and make $10 more an hour, but I can't go 3 months without health insurance. That's
Right.
gone.
Right. Well, in 6 months, I will be qualified for Medicare, so I'll be able to have some insights of something akin to universal health care. I still think there's some issues with Medicare, but at least it's better than what the average Joe has to do with. And if we had Medicare for all, I think we'd all be better off.
Well, I don't know a lot about Medicare, but I do know my dad was hospitalized due to an infection because of a kidney stone. Spent some time in the ICU, etc. And just his hospital stay from the ICU visit was like $65,000
That's
before
outrageous.
Medicare kicked in.
Right.
And I want to say it was 100 or $200 after Medicare kicked in and paid for everything. It was all he had to pay.
Right.
But when he got the first bill before Medicare paid anything, he was freaking out about how he was going to afford all of it.
Yeah.
I told him, I'm like, just give it time. Have they processed your insurance yet? Well, no. Okay. They sent you the bill before they processed it. They're going to process it. Just wait. You're going to get an updated one. And of course, he even knew that. Just he saw that huge dollar amount. He was just terrified.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if somebody sent me a bill for $65,000 for healthcare, I'd send them a note back going, good luck getting that motherfucker.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. I'm not giving you $65,000 even if I had it. Well,
Yeah.
Eric, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for coming in and spending some time bringing us up to date with Iowa and giving some thoughts about the shit show we are at the moment in the middle of.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoy being on the show. I'll be back again at some point, hopefully between now and the election, but if not, definitely after.
Now you'll be back before the election at least once, because I get tired and I get lazy, and it's so much easier when you guys are here. Let people know how they can find you. If they haven't found you on TikTok yet, they should, and it's going to be easy enough to do that. So let them know what they need to do.
So I am on both TikTok and YouTube as Analytical Iowan, all one word, ANALYTICALIOWAN. If you are watching the uh, video podcast on YouTube, I have linked it below down here somewhere.
Yeah,
I have my name written out. I have that same way both places. If you find me on TikTok, there is a link in my bio to the YouTube page. I think there's a link on my YouTube page back to TikTok as well.
right. Absolutely.
So I'm over there on both. I do try to get everything from TikTok up on YouTube. I'm still working around my work schedule. It's a little harder to get everything on both sites at the same time, but I'm working on at least getting them up same day over on YouTube.
Yeah, not everybody's retired and has nothing else to do like me,
Yeah,
except do
soon,
TikTok.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, yeah. The sooner the better. I highly recommend retirement. Well, for those of you folks listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.